I was a 34-year-old software engineer living in Seattle when my world turned upside down. I met Ava at a local coffee shop 3 years ago, and we had what I thought was a perfect marriage. We just bought our dream house, and everything seemed to be falling into place. Until yesterday, when I found something in her desk drawer that made my stomach drop. That sinking feeling when trust begins to crack cannot be described. If you are watching this from somewhere where trust was broken too, hit that subscribe button as we explore how the foundation of my marriage crumbled in an instant. The day I met Ava remains crystal clear in my memory. It was a rainy Tuesday at Emerald City Coffee where I was working on a coding project. She walked in with her dark hair dripping from the Seattle downpour, and somehow managed to look stunning despite being soaked. Our eyes met as she ordered her Americano, and I found myself offering her the empty chair at my table since the place was packed. Ava was not just beautiful but incredibly intelligent. As a marketing executive for a major tech firm, she understood my work in a way few people did. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from technology trends to our shared love of hiking the Cascades classic films from the 70s and attempting complicated recipes on weekends. 4 hours passed before either of us checked the time. Our courtship was a whirlwind. Within 2 months, we took a weekend trip to the Oregon coast, where we stayed in a tiny beachfront cottage. Walking along Cannon Beach at sunset, collecting sand dollars and talking about our dreams, I knew she was the one. By the 6-month mark, I proposed on Mount Rainier during a sunrise hike. Her tears of joy as she said yes made me feel like the luckiest man alive. Our wedding was small but perfect. Just 40 guests at a botanical garden with fairy lights strung through the trees, and Ava in a simple white dress that took my breath away. We moved into our first apartment together in Capitol Hill, a small one-bedroom with barely enough space for our combined book collections, but it felt like a palace because we shared it. Both of our careers took off in that first year. I received a promotion to senior developer, which came with a substantial raise and more flexible hours. Ava landed a major client that put her on the fast track at her firm. We celebrated each success together. Always a team. Always each other's biggest supporters. At least that is what I believed. With our improved financial situation, we began saving for a house. 2 years after our wedding, we founded a gorgeous craftsman-style home in Wallingford with a view of the lake and enough space for the family we planned to start. The day we got the keys, we spent the night on an air mattress in our empty living room, drinking champagne straight from the bottle and mapping out where every piece of furniture would go. It was around this time that I began noticing subtle changes in Ava. Looking back, the red flags were waving frantically, but I was too blinded by happiness to see them clearly. There were unexplained absences nights when she would come home late, claiming to be working on a big project. She mentioned new friends from work, but I never met them, despite suggesting double dates. Phone calls that would end abruptly when I entered the room. Passwords suddenly appearing on devices that had always been open between us. A knot of unease began forming in my stomach, but I pushed it down. We were both busy with demanding careers. It was natural to have separate lives to some extent. When I finally gathered the courage to ask her if everything was okay, she laughed and called me paranoid, then distracted me with plans for redecorating the guest room. Her explanation seemed plausible enough, and I was eager to believe it. As our 3rd anniversary approached, I decided to plan something special to recapture the magic of our early days together. I would surprise her with a weekend getaway to that same Oregon beach cottage where we had first talked about building a life together. Little did I know that my attempt to save our marriage would be what exposed its lies. I took the day off work to prepare for our anniversary surprise, wanting everything to be perfect. Ava had left early for what she said was a breakfast meeting with clients. The house was quiet as I searched through our home office for the folder containing our marriage certificate, thinking it would be romantic to bring it along and renew our vows on the beach. While rifling through her desk drawers, I found a stack of receipts that made no sense. Receipts for expensive dinners on nights. She had claimed to be working late hotel charges in downtown Seattle when she had told me she was at conferences. In Portland. Confusion gave way to suspicion as patterns emerged that could not be innocently explained away. My hands trembled as I continued searching, no longer looking for our marriage certificate but for answers. In the back of a locked drawer, I found a second phone, one I had never seen before. My heart pounded as I charged it and discovered it had no password protection. Perhaps she never imagined I would find it. The text messages revealed a year-long affair with Thomas, a client she had been working with since shortly after we bought our house. The messages were intimate, explicit, filled with inside jokes and plans for their future. Photos showed them together in various locations, including a cabin in the mountains that Ava had told me was a company retreat venue. Some of the timestamps matched dates when I had been worried sick because she was not answering her primary phone during supposed work emergencies. Feeling physically ill, I dug deeper and found statements for a bank account I knew nothing about. Thousands of dollars, tens of thousands deposited regularly. Following the digital trail, I uncovered evidence that many of her business trips had been fabrications. While I thought she was securing new clients in San Francisco or Los Angeles, she was meeting Thomas in luxury hotels often just miles from our home. The most damning evidence came in the form of financial documents revealing secret investments. They had purchased property together, a small condo downtown. They were making plans, building a life that ran parallel to but separate from the one she shared with me. Everything I thought we were saving for our future, our planned children, our retirement dreams, was being systematically diverted to this shadow relationship. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, the evidence spread before me, waiting for Ava to return home. Each minute stretched painfully as I rehearsed what to say, how to ask the question when I already knew the devastating answer. When the front door finally opened, I barely recognized my own voice as I asked her to sit down. Her face registered shock at seeing me home, quickly replaced by concern when she noticed my expression. I slid the phone across the table without speaking. Her face drained of color as she realized which phone it was. Her initial instinct was denial, claiming it was a work phone, that I was misunderstanding innocent messages. But as I silently added each piece of evidence to the pile between us, the denials crumbled. Finally, she confessed. But what hurt almost more than the betrayal was her attempt to blame me. She claimed I had been emotionally distant, too absorbed in my work, that I had stopped seeing her. Words poured from her that I had never heard before, cruel assessments of our relationship that she must have been harboring for months or years. The woman sitting across from me felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. When I asked if she would end the affair, her hesitation was answer enough. She said she needed to think things through, that she was confused about what she wanted. I watched in stunned silence as she packed a bag, saying she would stay with a friend for a few days. She did not specify which friend, but we both knew where she was going. After she left, I collapsed. The physical pain of betrayal is something no one warns you about: the crushing weight on your chest, the nausea, the pounding headache. For a week I moved through our home like a ghost, unable to eat, to sleep, to work. I called in sick, ignored messages from concerned coworkers. I could not bear to speak the truth aloud, to make it real by sharing it with others. The depression that followed was unlike anything I had experienced before. I took leave from work, unable to focus on code when my life had been so thoroughly hacked. Simple tasks became mountains to climb. Showering, eating, even getting out of bed required effort I could barely muster. Our house, once a symbol of our future, became a museum of lies. My isolation might have continued indefinitely if not for my friends Jackson and Daniel. When I missed our weekly basketball game for the second time with no explanation, they showed up at my door. Their shock at my appearance, Jackson said I looked like I had aged 5 years in 2 weeks, broke through my fog enough to tell them everything. Their support was immediate and unwavering, but the damage Ava was doing continued to spread. She had begun controlling the narrative among our mutual friends, suggesting that I had been controlling, that she had been unhappy for years, that her affair was the result of my neglect rather than its cause. Some believed her, and the invitations and messages from those friends stopped coming. 17 days after Ava left, her lawyer contacted me about divorce proceedings. She wanted the house, half my retirement accounts, and alimony, despite her own substantial income. The preliminary divorce papers revealed even more financial deception, assets, hidden accounts I never knew existed. She had been planning her exit strategy for longer than the affair itself, methodically preparing to extract maximum benefit while leaving me with as little as possible. Through mutual friends who remained loyal to me, I learned of additional betrayals. Ava had not been with just Thomas. There had been others, brief affairs during business trips, encounters she had carefully concealed. Each new revelation was another blow to my already shattered self-image. How could I have been so blind? How could I have failed to see the person I slept beside every night? Rock bottom came on a rainy night, similar to the one when we first met. I sat in our darkened living room, a bottle of whiskey, my only companion contemplating, giving her everything she wanted just to make the pain stop. Why fight for material possessions, when everything that mattered was already lost? My phone rang repeatedly. Jackson Daniel, my father. I ignored them all. It was my father who finally reached me, not through the phone but by showing up at my door at midnight, fear evident in his eyes. He had driven 3 hours from Portland after my friends called him concerned about my mental state. As we sat at the kitchen table where I had confronted Ava weeks earlier, he shared something I had never known about his own life. How my mother had not been his first wife, how his first marriage had ended through betrayal similar to mine, and how he had rebuilt his life from the ashes. The next day, still reeling but slightly more functional, I met with financial advisor Laura, whom Jackson had recommended. Her systematic analysis of Ava's financial manipulations revealed a calculated pattern of deception that had begun even before we purchased our house. What I had attributed to financial savvy had been careful groundwork for her eventual departure. That evening, drowning in new information, but no closer to emotional stability, I decided to pick up dinner from my favorite Thai restaurant. It was there that I saw them, Ava and Thomas, dining intimately at a corner table, her hand entwined with his, both laughing as if my world was not in pieces. Something snapped inside me. The public confrontation that followed was not my proudest moment. Harsh words were exchanged. Tears fell mine, not hers, and other diners watched uncomfortably as 3 years of marriage disintegrated between the pad thai and the green curry. Thomas, the brave home wrecker, called for the manager while Ava hissed at me to stop embarrassing her. I left before security arrived, but not before telling Thomas exactly what kind of woman he was welcome to. Back home, sitting on our kitchen floor with my back against the refrigerator, I reached what felt like the absolute bottom. Humiliated, betrayed, and now potentially facing legal consequences for the scene at the restaurant, I stared at a photo that had fallen from the fridge door. It was me taken before I met Ava, standing on a mountain summit with arms raised in triumph. The man in that photo had been whole, confident, self-sufficient. What had happened to him? That was my moment of clarity, sitting on that cold tile floor. I could continue. As a victim, letting Ava dictate the terms of not just our divorce, but my emotional well-being. Or I could reclaim my life. The choice, when framed that way, was suddenly obvious. I stood up, washed my face, and for the first time in weeks, looked at myself in the mirror with something approaching resolve. My first active decision was to call attorney Sophia Williams, known for handling high-conflict divorces involving financial deception. Her consultation fee was steep, but her reputation was stellar. I would need to sell some investments to afford her services, but protecting myself from Ava's predatory legal strategy would be worth it. Over the next week, I gathered evidence, obsessively creating timelines of Ava's deceptions, documenting every financial discrepancy, securing statements for all accounts before she could alter them. I forwarded emails, screenshot text messages, and collected witness statements from friends who had seen her with Thomas while we were still together. I approached it like a coding project, methodical and precise. The night after filing my counterpetition with Sophia's help, I slept peacefully for the first time since discovering the affair. Not because the pain had disappeared, it was still very much present, but because I was no longer passive in my own life story. Whatever happened next, I would face it standing rather than lying down. Engaging Sophia turned out to be the best decision I could have made. Unlike Ava's lawyer, who relied on emotional manipulation and aggressive tactics, Sophia was methodical and unflappable. When presented with evidence of Ava's financial fraud, including unauthorized transfers from our joint accounts, she advised me to file not just for divorce, but for financial restitution. Documentation became my salvation. Every suspicious transaction, every manipulated statement, every hidden account I had discovered, all became ammunition in protecting what was rightfully mine. The meticulous records I had compiled left little room for Ava to maneuver legally. Her intimidation tactics escalated as she realized her advantage was slipping. Late-night phone calls, threatening text messages, even showing up at my workplace, once all attempts to regain control that only reinforced my determination to break free completely. I blocked her number, reported the workplace incident to security, and communicated exclusively through our attorneys. The support system that formed around me was unexpected, but deeply appreciated. Jackson and Daniel remained steadfast, taking turns checking in on me and dragging me out for meals when they suspected I was not eating properly. Coworkers I had never been particularly close with stepped up with recommendations for therapists' offers to cover projects when court dates interfered with work, and simple kindness when I needed it most. Healing began in small steps. The therapist I started seeing, Dr. Marshall, specialized in betrayal trauma. Our weekly sessions gave me tools to process both the relationship and its ending. I established a rigorous exercise routine, running along the lake each morning, until exhaustion temporarily quieted my thoughts. I joined a divorce support group, finding unexpected comfort in the stories of others who had walked this path before me. The court date loomed for months, but when it finally arrived, justice was swift and decisive. The judge, visibly disturbed by the evidence of financial manipulation, awarded me the house with a buyout option for Ava, significantly below market value, protected my retirement accounts, and dismissed her alimony claims entirely. Furthermore, she was ordered to repay funds she had diverted from our joint accounts with interest. Ava's face, as the judgment was read, revealed a woman who had never anticipated consequences. Her carefully constructed exit strategy had crumbled, leaving her with legal bills and a significantly diminished settlement. The final blow came from an unexpected quarter when Thomas, her devoted affair partner, ended their relationship weeks after the court decision. According to mutual friends, he became uncomfortable with financial issues that arose after the settlement, suggesting his interest had always been partially motivated by what he believed was her secure financial position. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Ava reached out directly despite our no-contact agreement. She suggested meeting for coffee to discuss reconciliation, claiming to have made a terrible mistake. The old me might have jumped at this chance, but the person I had become recognized the offer for what it was: opportunism, rather than genuine remorse. My response was brief and final. No thank you. Best of luck. Goodbye. Moving from our dream house was bittersweet. Though legally mine, every corner held memories I needed to escape. I found a modern apartment in a different neighborhood, furnished it simply with only a few items from our shared life, and focused on creating a space that belonged solely to me. The view was not as spectacular, the square footage, more modest, but it was untainted by lies, and thus infinitely more valuable. 6 months after moving, an unexpected opportunity arose at work, a chance to lead a new development team in a different department. The role would mean new challenges, new colleagues, and a fresh professional identity separate from the person whose wife had caused a scene in the office lobby. I accepted immediately, throwing myself into building something new from the ground up. Dating again happened gradually and cautiously. My first attempts were disasters, casual coffee meets that turned awkward when the topic of past relationships inevitably arose. But with time and practice, I learned to share my story without letting it dominate my present. I discovered that vulnerability properly expressed was not weakness, but strength. Meeting Melissa at a friend's birthday dinner was not the lightning strike that meeting Ava had been. There were no dramatic downpours or instant connections. Just pleasant conversation that led to exchanging numbers, a casual lunch the following week, and a slow-building interest that felt refreshingly honest. When I disclosed my divorce after several dates, her response was compassionate but measured. She shared her own past heartbreaks without dwelling on them. We agreed to move forward slowly, each step deliberate and transparent. The lessons learned through betrayal run deep, imprinting themselves on every future interaction. I see clearly now the red flags I ignored with Ava. The inconsistencies in her stories. The gradual withdrawal of emotional intimacy, while maintaining the appearance of connection. The subtle ways she undermined my confidence while presenting herself as supportive. These awareness points do not make me suspicious of everyone, but they do keep me vigilantly attuned to authenticity in relationships. Self-respect and boundaries became my non-negotiables. Where once I might have overlooked minor betrayals to maintain peace, I now recognize that compromising core values only leads to greater pain later. This does not mean perfection. I make allowances for human mistakes and forgive genuine remorse, but it does mean maintaining standards for how I deserve to be treated. 1 year after discovering Ava's betrayal, I scarcely recognized the broken man who sat on that kitchen floor. My career has expanded in directions I never anticipated with a patent pending for a security algorithm I developed. My relationship with Melissa continues to evolve naturally, without the forced acceleration that characterized my time with Ava. My friendships are fewer but deeper, built on shared values, rather than circumstantial connections. The most profound change has been internal. Forgiveness, I discovered, was not about absolving Ava of responsibility for her actions. It was about freeing myself from the burden of anger that threatened to define my future. I forgave her not for her benefit, but for mine, and in doing so, reclaimed pieces of myself that betrayal had threatened to destroy permanently. Trust once broken can be rebuilt, but it must begin with trusting oneself. Learning to honor my own instincts, to believe my own perceptions, to validate my own feelings, these were the foundation upon which all other trust could be reconstructed. The process is ongoing, but each day brings more stability to that foundation. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that forced you to rebuild your life? What helped you move forward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of overcoming betrayal resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most powerful new beginnings. Thank you for listening, and may your own journey, whatever challenges it holds, lead you to greater strength and wisdom.